it doesn't last for very long. I think that in order to move things forward, the first step is we need to take it out of those private conversations and bring it into the public forum. We need to have this as that's part of normalizing something, right? Where people aren't shying away from the topic and saying, oh, like we can't talk about that here, or like come over here and I'll help you out. We need to make it something that's normal to talk about, and so that people, when it does come up, they don't feel like they need to shy away from the conversation, or for the people at the more extreme end of things, don't feel squeamish when the topic comes up, right? If it's in our face more and more and more, and it's something that's talked about more often and for longer periods of time, people's comfort level will rise over time, right? So I think the first step is exactly what you're doing with this project and just giving it a space in a public forum. I found it on Instagram. I'm sure it's available in other forums as well, but just having it be publicly available and talking about the issues. And then even if people are going to be, like, oh, no, I don't talk about that, but they're scrolling in their free time and they see something, like they might learn something. I think a lot of people probably don't know that many females have missed school at times or have missed major events in their life because they were on their period and they didn't have the products that they needed. People don't think that happens in Canada or in the States or in the Western world, but it does. Obviously, it happens at far higher rates in other countries, but this is something that's a problem and we need to address it. And we can't get to the real problems and like making sure that everybody has the products that they need if we can't even talk about it, right? So to me, I think bringing these conversations out of the shadows is the first step, and you guys are doing an awesome job at that. This is exactly what needs to happen.
Thank you so much. And there's definitely, well, first of all, there's a whole group of us doing it, and we're just two of the people. So the credit should go to everyone in that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But the group just a few weeks ago, they did this huge bottle drive. So we raised $1,000 and some for menstrual products, and I'm not sure exactly where the money is completely going yet, but we're hoping to send it towards northern communities that have more sparse access to not just menstrual products, but groceries and everything in general.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing is there's a huge taboo around the concept of menstruation too, because I don't know if you heard this growing up, but if a girl was having a bad day and then their classmates would just make this side comment of oh, well, she's just on her period
she's
today.
PMSing. Yeah, it's actually that's when we're at our highest levels of testosterone, so maybe we're not the issue. Oh, and it shows itself in so many ways. I am 30 years old and I still make sure that when it's a work day and I have my period, that I'm wearing something that has long sleeves, so that when I go to the washroom, I can put a tampon up my sleeve and nobody has to see it. Nobody has to be uncomfortable and I don't have to be embarrassed. It's just kind of crazy. I shouldn't feel embarrassed and I shouldn't feel compelled to be hiding what's going on with the normal functioning of my body. But those are real feelings that I definitely experience and haven't overcome yet, that we need to work on. People shouldn't have to be hiding this. So if I'm embarrassed or scared to make someone else uncomfortable because I have a tampon on hand, of course there are girls who are 13, 12, whatever, have a long way to go with accepting their bodies, accepting themselves, that are going to be opting out of certain things because they don't even have the products that they need. It's crazy. I grew up in a very, very, very rural, very conservative area. And so these things were very, very hush hush. And I didn't even have a full understanding of how everything worked until I was way older, right? And it's not okay for that to be the case, and it shouldn't be something that is so common, but it is. But yeah, I just like think about it every single month when I'm like shoving a tampon up my sleeve. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, really? It's ridiculous, but I really truly don't want to make anyone else uncomfortable. And I know that if I did pass someone in the hallway and they saw that, I know that they would be uncomfortable. And so that right there tells you the amount of work that still needs to be done in this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
Definitely.
really just takes some like shoving in the face, right? If you see it on Instagram or on ads all the time, then maybe people will be more comfortable with it,
Exactly.
right?
And I think a lot of it too is, obviously this isn't the most important thing, but I do think it has an impact, is using the proper terminology and words. So like not using these more socially acceptable terms that are like colloquialisms. I'm for sure gonna age myself here, but I know when I was like in high school and stuff, people would always say like, oh, like she must be on the rag or whatever, right? There are all these terms that we use for it that are all, they're kind of like trying to make it a little bit more fine or funny or whatever. And it's like, well, no, like I have my period. That's not a bad thing to say. And it shouldn't make everyone like, you know, kind of hold their breath for a second. So I think using the proper terminology is something that is important as well, so that when we are talking about it, we're talking about it in a way that isn't minimizing the issue or coloring it in a different, you know, way, or trying to make it more easy to talk about.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's a great response.
Okay, so I'll do my last question then. So, what are your thoughts on gender equality towards children as they're growing up? Girls being told that they're pretty like princesses, and boys being told they're strong like men. Girls being given Barbies, and boys being given dinosaurs to play with. Do you believe that adults should be careful when speaking to little girls about their looks? And should children have the freedom to pick out their own toys, despite their femininity or masculinity?
Okay. I'm obsessed with this question. I think it's so good. And it's something that I've definitely been paying more attention to over the past 5 years or so. And I was totally guilty of this myself. Whenever I saw a little girl, my inclination was always to be like, oh, she's so cute, you know, and it's just like, ooh, you want to squeeze them. Um, but I was always talking about their appearance in that way. Whereas like with the boys, I would find myself being like, oh, like, what do you like to do? Right? Where it's very action based. And so I was like, it was one of those things that you realize about yourself and you're disgusted. You're like, whoa, like, who am I? This is not at all what I want to support or perpetuate. So I've made a lot of strides there. And I think that it is extremely important to be careful how we talk to kids, because that's what shapes us and forms us, right? And so, like I said earlier, so much of a female's worth in our society is derived from her appearance. And I think that starts very, very young with exactly what you're talking about. Like, oh, you're so pretty, and like, look at those curls in your hair, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So I think we do need to shift how we're talking to kids, because whether or not they even know at that point in time, I do believe that has an impact on them and their trajectory. So very important. I was reading something the other day and it was so interesting. It was talking about the toys that we give kids. And it said how little girls are given toys that have that are scientific based, like 30% less than little boys, right? So you think about like the doctor kits that you can have with the stethoscope, or like, I know there are even the toys you can get that you can do little science experiments and stuff like that. We're giving girls dolls, like, learn how to care for this thing at this early stage, you know, feed it, swaddle it, all of those sorts of things. But we don't tend to do that with boys. whereas, generally takes the two coming together in order to bring a child into the world in any event. So like maybe boys should also learn how to feed a living thing and swaddle it and comfort it. So yeah, all of our interactions like that with kids definitely shape them and shape their expectations for themselves and limit their options that they think are available to them. So I think it probably for kids becomes more apparent when they see a child of the opposite sex being given something different from them. And they're like, well, why do they get that and I don't? And then it's like, that's a very good question for the adult. Why did they get that and you didn't, right? And I know my husband and I have talked about it before, because every now and again, I don't know, our minds are always working, right? So I know there was one time that I was like, hey, quick question. He was like, okay, what? Like whenever I ask something, he just like knows it's going to be something random and whatever. And I was like, when we have kids someday, would you be like, how would you feel if we had a son and I brought home like a kitchenette for them to play with? Like, do you think that's like, do you have any feelings about that? Or is it like, whatever, but it's, unfortunately, that's not necessarily normal for us. Whereas I know when I was a kid, I had a kitchenette. My mom tried so hard to get me to love Barbies and I just didn't care about them. I had my teddy bear and that was good enough. But we give girls these things that encourage their like mothering skills and child caring skills, which is important, but I think that's important for boys and girls. Whereas we give boys toys that encourage professions and what are you going to do and how do you take action. And even with the clothes that you see with little kids, like in the boys section, there's like NASA t-shirts and like stuff with like a baseball bat and like shooting hoops and whatever. And then the girls, we get like things that aren't even real. We get like fairy shirts and stuff, it's just, I don't know. Those things may seem very small. It may seem silly to stand up and make a stink about the type of clothes that are offered to girls and boys. But I think when you look at these things cumulatively, what impact does that have? And I know that if I had a son or a daughter, I would never, ever, ever have wanted to contribute to them feeling limited with what they're able to do someday.
Yeah, I think that's great.
It's just like, sorry. Go ahead, Kia.
Oh my God. Okay. It's because you don't think about it. It's again, it's like second nature when you're talking to a child. If she's a girl, just be like, oh, you look so pretty, right? Stuff like that. And with boys, it's kind of like if they fall over, it's just like, you're okay, right? Yeah. Just walk it off.
You're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like girls are very much like, oh, are you okay? Mm-hmm. All that sort of stuff, right? It's just kind of
impose this fragility on them.
Yeah.
Whereas the boys, we do the opposite, right? Like
exactly.
Like how many times have you said to a little boy like, "Oh, you're so strong," and then they're like,
exactly.
like strength comes in handy for everyone, right?
Exactly.
Why does it need to be a boy thing?
Yeah.
And something that I think has been helpful to me in trying to make sure that I talk to kids in a way that is like healthy and makes their world bigger instead of smaller is instead of saying things to them and making statements to them, trying to ask them questions.